Hey, we're back after a interesting impact that technically the only thing people were waiting for was Kenny Omega, not much of, actual interest from the Impact episode. I know there's some positives and negatives about Impact, but people just wanted to see what Kenny Omega had to say, and he's technically just doing what Austin Aries did like back in 2018. But besides that point, what really happened here on what am I really going to talk about this afternoon? I mean this morning. Well, it's not really about, anything exciting at this major point of pro wrestling. It's from the past. Now, if you haven't seen, there's been plenty of YouTube, wrestling YouTubers that I personally watch, that I enjoy their content. I'm not gonna put them around the bus as what they probably have fond memories of, but this little exemplary hype of like, oh my god, 2015 was the best year of being a wrestling fan. Like, dude, whatever you had that was enjoyable back in 2016, I could understand. I was hyped too. I mean, getting to see AJ Styles in WWE was pretty cool because he was already teasered to go like later 2015. The whole brand split. I heard a lot, like everybody talking about how genius 2016 SmackDown was, and all this hype over it was just better back in 2016. I thought that was like the beginning of pro wrestling taking a downward spiral when we were more reliant on like just work rate level matches, relying more on the indie style of stuff, and most of the guys that we push now are being undermining and returned to the indies. Like, look at just look from 2016 SmackDown. What was the top of the line main eventers back then? Dean Ambrose, Dolph Ziggler, AJ Styles. These guys are dependable talents that would be good for the mid card, and yet Vince thought it'd be a good idea to split up over the brand split when he knew he didn't have that much talent, that much over than the talent pool, and that much of a sizable roster, unlike what happened back in 2001, when he literally bet out two wrestling feds for pennies on the dollar. One because of an AOL contract, and TNN had want nothing to do with ECW after Paul Heyman literally just tried to press them to take him off the air. That they did. And I have nothing personally against these guys. In dependable times, some of these guys can pull out good matches, and I'm not just saying that because I want to be different, that I want to be negative. I'm not always negative. I have fond memories of wrestling matches with these talents. But dude, like SummerSlam 2016 sucked. WrestleMania 32 sucked. Over most of the general consensual hype that Ring of Honor even had back in 2016, it was over the selling point of just the Bullet Club pushing up whenever it can. No one can give me a phenomenal like Ring of Honor top 2016 matches. It was at least decent like early part of the year when you had Styles getting already shoved up over to the top of the scene. The New Day were already over. They were doing a decent time trying to make Charlotte look legit. And it was just more of a building process. And when you bring over the brand split, it's going to rush more of the development. And I think that's when it started. And by the way, SmackDown was about to move to Tuesdays. I think that was one of the negatives because you had to see 5 hours of wrestling in just 2 weeks. I mean, in 2 days. And then NXT would be on a Wednesday until it aired live on 2019. Like, just we had the most boring WrestleMania, and that was WrestleMania 32. The most sizable or at least watchable pay-per-views from 2016 was either As I remember, I think Backlash, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, probably Extreme Rules last time I remember, Fastlane, and I think it's TLC. Oh god, and the people that they were pushing. Uh, I, just don't take this the wrong way. I had a video on a downfall. I didn't say that he sucked. I said that it was a downfall for Finn Balor. This guy was a consensual a push to the roster for hardcore fans. Hardcore fans. No casual fan base knows what NXT is. They're not that invested over the backstory of an indie wrestler, unless there's that much of interesting character or at least a charisma. Because Eddie Guerrero pushed over from the indies. Even when he was in the WWF and got released and went to the indies, he came back because they know how much of an abrasive talent Eddie Guerrero is. Finn Balor, I thought he was a decent, admirable athlete, but I thought that was about it. The guy came up in his debut, and when y'all at least complain about Roman Reigns getting pushed upon his throat, at least he had memorable movesets. He looked legit. He has a background show, with a basic reason why he would even be in the top of the card. He's beaten top guys before, and by the way, he was over. Plus, his moves get him over. Finn Balor spent like one night on Raw after getting top of the draft picks, then gets in a fatal 4-way to beat Roman Reigns, and then he immediately gets pushed up to the main event spot where he faces off against Seth Rollins for the Universal Championship. And by the way, the boos of the Universal Championship were astronomical. There were roasts, recolorings, disrespects over to the title, plus Mick Foley as freaking as GM, was just absolutely apparent. Like, it's terrible. I didn't mind Chris Jericho back in his little list gimmick thing, so I'll at least get that out of mind. I thought it was a tiny bit entertaining, but it's sort of hit or miss, and that's dependent on people's humor. Because people's not always going to be entertained off this forcible YouTube humor pro wrestling feds wants to do now. And it's been happening over the adaptation of what WWE thinks gets people to laugh. And that's over their age range. So I guess it's not going to be funny to most people, especially adults, but for some young guys or kids, that's going to be a bit hilarious that Jericho says it. And he put somebody in the list that I was getting over. So I'll at least accept that. But Raw sucked. Raw sucked as well back in 2016. Like, you had the nude segments with Enzo, Big Cass getting pushed over to a single scene. He was even in a fatal 4-way for the vacant Universal title just after Finn Balor busted his shoulder from a powerbomb from the barricade back at SummerSlam of that same year. And let me tell you something. I'd rather Mike Knox fusion danced with Matt Morgan, and they would make a more topical star that can get better charisma than Big Cass. Enzo was annoying, disgusting, and weird, but at least he had charisma, he was quotable, the guy was fun to watch, and he didn't need, always athleticism to get him over. And the fans noticed that. I could see why he would be he was more memorable in his cruiserweight title reign than anything else. Oh, by the way, the Cruiserweight Classic. Ooh, people always bring this up. Dude, this was the death of any, legitimacy of, actually making pro wrestling feel serious. Or at least, do anything cool. I don't know why. Okay. So, they make a worldwide appeal, work rate, freaking random indie-rific showcase. And the only people that you probably remember that were in this tournament were Kota Ibushi, Brian Kendrick, Tajiri, Cedric Alexander, because some of these guys are in the main roster now, or at least on NXT, or an individual branch show called 205 Live. even though that's just different because it's a weight class differential show. The only thing I remember that was like who was like an authority figure was I think Nigel McGuinness, then Drake Maverick before they stupidly released him. Then they bring him back to just be a mid-carder on NXT. That was, I think, a dumb idea. Because Drake Maverick, I can see why people don't like him that much on TV sometimes. But the guy is somewhat charismatic. He's entertaining to watch, and his segments trying to consummate his marriage with some random chick while being 24/7 champion. It was one of the funner parts of like I think 2019 Raw, other than him pissing himself back in Survivor Series with the Big Show. Just saying. Oh my God! Just everybody keeps hyping over in the Cruiserweight Classic, and it's like, what's it really being different? I can literally like pull up anything that's going on Raw, and Kevin Owens do tope suicidas, rollouts, and already people's doing false finishes with moonsaults everywhere. Sure, it's nice to see that they want to, bring back the cruiserweights, but it doesn't subligate an identity, and they try like the whole 180. They try making the mat different. They try making the ropes different, even though you're just seeing a regular match of cruiserweights. You're not tearing anything from the buff, especially when you're giving them the third hour. And most of the matches that you have stupid storylines. I think the only thing people remember was Neville was heel. And Austin Aries was just being a commentator. Even though Austin Aries shown to be a prima donna douche. No disrespect to Austin Aries, but dude, we already saw what dumb crap you did no selling John Morrison back at Bound for Glory 2018. Your dumb little complaints over what happened with NXT. I'm sorry. Kevin Owens' world title reign was trash. I'm so happy Goldberg took the belt from him the next year from Fastlane. We had the lowest recorded television ratings, and yes, you could say that it was deprived more as well from 2015, and that had plethora of problems, don't get me wrong. But dude, it's like Kevin Owens, Dean Ambrose, Finn Balor as world champions. When in the hell, whenever you reviewed Raw, you go back on these segments, that you ever saw a ratings pull? Nobody ever brings up televised ratings, viewerships, absolute pop. So, sure, you could be like, you could hear that you deserve it, and so many people, you were probably happy because you've seen these guys from the indies on NXT. It's great, and I'm happy that your favorite wrestler won a world title. Hell, I jumped for joy when I saw Chris Jericho become world heavyweight champion. I know how you feel. But dude, it's just not interesting when these guys can't draw. They can't. Kevin Owens can do so much, while most of his charisma was just pleading over most of what Chris Jericho did to get him over. And just saying, Roman Reigns! And that's it. Then he had these just sycophant tag team matches involving who he was feuding with the world title, having Chris Jericho make Hell in a Cell matches feel boring, and then just go back and forth feudings with 50-50 bookings, where he still remained champion when he feuded with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns on the same brand. But David, you're forgetting SmackDown. SmackDown was literally the best part of 2016. Didn't you see the Heath Slater Rhino stuff? Yes, I did, and I found that nice. What about Ziggler and Dean Ambrose? No, that was boring. It was really boring. Like, true to God, that was boring. I have never seen a match so disinteresting. I mean, yeah, you got some average spots, some DDTs, then you ended off with the dirty deeds. The match had a very little story other than Ziggler with his umpteenth attempt to try to say, oh, this is for me getting over the hump. This is nobody cares. He did the same pleading notion when he was facing off and feuding with The Miz for the IC Championship, and where he was beating guys like Apollo Crews when he was feuding with Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Cesaro. That's kind of a downgrade in my opinion. And that was happening for the last few weeks until they gave him the title, I think, No Mercy. Then he lost it the next month. They even reference the Spirit Squad, and they make me forcibly want to care for Ziggler. And yes, it was a decent hype factor, and the match did deliver. Ziggler got what he needed, and then he lost because Miz is more charismatic. As well as I dislike The Miz at least does decent, ability to do good promos, average matches, and he can make decent hype into a match. Ziggler just screams sycophantically, and he does his 27 super kicks that don't draw. I swear we were getting like 1.7s when Dean Ambrose was also champion. Dean Ambrose was champion over the start of the brand split come over the draft from 2016. I think that came July, from after Battleground. Battleground also sucked. I mean, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose a triple threat match. That would be like a dream booking for WrestleMania 33 for the next year. Yet they forced it out just so they can have the WrestleMania moment. So they can have they did the same hype factor BS at Money in the Bank 2016. That was the same pay-per-view that Titus O'Neil, sorry to bring this up, he kissed his son in the mouth. I would be caught dead if my own father does that to me. I would shoot him in the head. That's literally what I have for Titus O'Neil. The way they also ruined Rusev over the last few years, and the only decent enough storyline that actually got some interest out of most people was when he was cucked over by Bobby Lashley, and that was the final year that he was even in the company. At least I was pushing over ratings when they did their season premiere the last October. Just saying, guys. It was a dumb storyline, but it was a storyline. A lack of what WWE does to actually make compelling television. Seriously. AJ Styles was like the final champion of the year, final World WWE champion of the year, after we had, I think, 5 different world champions. We had Roman Reigns. We had Roman Reigns early, like January. Then Triple H won it back at the Rumble. Roman Reigns won it back at WrestleMania. Then he held it for a few months until he lost it to Rollins back at Money in the Bank. Then Dean Ambrose cashed in. Just at the same night. Then we had him lose the world title, I think it was later in the year, to AJ Styles. And I gotta tell you, we were getting higher ratings when Triple H and Roman Reigns were champion. A 1.7 and a 1.8 ain't that good. Guys, I don't want to ruin probably your childhood, because you guys were probably like 16, 15 years old when there was at least a population growth, when Bullet Club were popular. I mean, in the wrestling community, not that primarily mainstream, but they were selling somewhat equivalent to merch to how much the New Day were getting as popular, because they came with some Saiyan gear type BS in a squash match against the League of Nations. Ooh, you remember that team? As well as the Social Outcasts that were still there, the Ascension that were still jobbers, the Wyatt family that were still jobbers. Dude, I'm trying to find fond memories, man. The Rock was just there for no reason, just to bury the Wyatt family. Cena came in later over the year, even though he showed up at WrestleMania. It was a feel-good moment, probably, to see Rollins back at Extreme Rules. I liked when Styles came in the Rumble and surprised everybody. I don't want to say that there was completely negative. Shane McMahon jumping off the Hell in a Cell was literally the favorite parts of the year. and Chris Jericho. I'm not gonna say entire. I'm not gonna try to entirely bury 1 year of pro wrestling because there's always negatives and positives. Even in 2020, there's been positives, but still negatives. Nothing's perfect, and nothing was that popular. Pro wrestling, in my opinion, won't even be that mainstream in quite a while. I don't want to say that because I love pro wrestling, and I don't want it to die. So just take it as you will. That's just my intake. That's most of my experience back in 2016, especially with the WWE product right there still freaking suffering because it was losing most of its mainstream appeal. Most of the pay-per-views are mediocre. I thought that the brand split shouldn't have happened in the first place. Even if it did, they didn't do much to actually make the two brands feel different. And especially airing it on the same network, even though it's owned by the same company, didn't really push competition. And Finn Balor was gonna get ruined anyway, even when there wasn't any brand split and they would just do regular call-ups. But that's just my opinion on it. Oh God, that's what I can say about 2016 for WWE. Other than that, tell me how you feel in the comments section.